Morgan Harper, it's a pleasure to have you here with us on Real Vision today. You are running for a United States Senate seat in Ohio in 2022, and you're on a journey of discovery right now about cryptocurrency. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You know, it's extremely interesting to have you here with us on Real Vision today for a number of reasons. First, we don't do overtly political content on Real Vision. We talk about ideas. We've had lots of folks on Real Vision to talk about cryptocurrency over the years, many from the libertarian political spectrum, folks influenced by Ayn Rand, Friedrich von Hayek, and Milton Friedman. You come at this from a very different perspective. In your congressional race, I think in 2019, you were endorsed by Justice Democrats. That's the Progressive Political Action Committee associated with the Squad, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. So we're extremely interested to have you here today because that's a perspective that our audience probably hasn't heard before. But first, before we start talking about that, you've had an extremely interesting life. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be where you are right now.
Yeah, it's been a wayward journey for sure. So, I was born here in Columbus, Ohio at the Ohio State University Hospital, and I was given up for adoption by a teenager who I was born to immediately. And I was in a foster home as an infant and then was adopted and raised by my mom on the east side of the city. And, we went through a lot early on, like a lot of people in our country, certainly in Ohio. And I had that experience at age 6 of this big life shock. We had, my parents went through this bitter divorce, and it just showed me that everything could slip away. No one's coming to save you. And this is the reality of our country. And that just struck me as off. Unfair. Something's weird about that. And I got to figure out at some point what that is and protect people and make sure that we're not so vulnerable. So, long story short, that put me in a position once I got a scholarship to go to Tufts University in Boston. I learned there was this thing called public policy, that none of these outcomes are an accident. It's all designed by people who are in positions of power in government, and I'm going to have to become one of those people. And eventually, I worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in Washington during the Obama administration and started to just understand the limits of ideas, policy, and the need for better politics, people who are going to get in positions of power and make sure that we get to that outcome of everybody being able to have more economic freedom and greater stability in their lives.
So in between Tufts and the Obama administration, you've had sort of an extraordinary academic career as well. Stanford Law, Princeton. Tell us a little bit about your academic training, your background, and how that began to shape your views of the world.
Yeah, so after I graduated from Tufts, I went to Washington because, like I said, I learned, okay, this is where decisions are happening too. My first job was at the Federal Trade Commission, and I was shocked to see what, a lot of what I was told as a young person raised in a fairly conservative environment here in Ohio, that federal government is a waste, the bureaucracy, it doesn't do anything. And I got to an agency and felt like, yeah, maybe people were right, that it's not doing anything. There's a lot more discussions about how much you were going to pay to get filtered water at your job rather than trying to aggressively produce outcomes that would help people. And but I didn't give up exactly on the vision that I had of government really serving people. And I just felt, all right, I got to get some more training here to figure out what's happening. And so, got a scholarship to go to Princeton University to get a master's in public policy, learned a lot about the intersections of domestic policy, international policy, and also became a lawyer, went to Stanford Law School. And really, feeling like there are a lot of rules that are getting placed on us. And I've been on the position of being on the receiving end of those rules and how they impact real people's lives, my family's life, and wanting to figure out how can we both combine the lived experience about how some of those outcomes don't serve us well, but also with the training and the access to be able to be in positions of power to make things work better. And so it's been a really organic journey, honestly. I mean, I think a lot of times, and you started our conversation touching on some of the political ideologies and categories you get put into, but I've just been on a learning journey my whole life. And I find sometimes labels get imposed on you, but really coming from a place of how do we get to that position of everyone being able to lead a more stable life, having more control over our lives, having more freedom, and how can public policy be a vehicle to achieve that?
Okay, so talking about that journey, how do you first get introduced to cryptocurrency?
So the first time that I heard about crypto was when I was working at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And for those who aren't aware, I mean, this is an agency that was created after the last financial crisis, and really because there was this understanding that folks in government had been asleep at the wheel, and that we had a lot of people that were supposed to be looking after the mortgage industry in particular, and they were placed in different agencies within the federal bureaucracy, but no one was really laser focused on what was going to be necessary to avert this type of crisis and another one that might come up. And so it was there that we had a vision of the agency, and why I can authentically say to people government can be better is because we had an agency that was trying to be data driven, that was also connecting to innovation, and we had a whole department that was focused on areas of innovation, and one of the topics they would bring up was crypto. So it wasn't in my portfolio or one of the issues that I focused on very closely, but that was the first time in 2012, 2013 where I started to hear people talk about this new area that was going to be having a big impact potentially on the lives of consumers and our financial system.
Yeah, so this is fascinating. Very recently, I had a conversation with Dan Roberts, who's the editor-in-chief of Decrypt, one of the primary daily crypto publications out there. And we were having this conversation about one of the unusual things about cryptocurrency right now in 2021. We obviously live in an incredibly polarized political environment. But what's fascinating is that cryptocurrency does not break down along traditional partisan lines as neatly as everything else on the political public policy spectrum seems to. It divides more along generational lines. So it's very interesting. As I said at the open on the show, we've had lots of folks on Real Vision who come to this from a libertarian perspective. There's a great deal of libertarianism in the community. It's very interesting to have a conversation with someone who comes to it from a progressive perspective. Tell us a little bit about how you reconcile those two propositions.
Well, I think our politics are really scrambled right now, especially as we look at the next generation, which I'm 38, almost 40, probably straddling a couple of generations, but there's a fatigue of what our politics has been, a politics that's been driven by more about careers and keeping your friends in power. And if you get there, then you get wealthy and you protect, concentrated corporate power and, among a few, and rather than making sure that most of us are okay, and a real desire for ideas, for actually just getting things done and not being so beholden to a specific political party. And, for me, I think that's a huge opportunity. And it's one that I try to embrace in the style of politics that we do. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. I'm running as a Democrat, but I also am open to dialogue and discussion and ideas. And I think that is the only way that we're going to be able to preserve our democracy, our country, our economy moving forward to continue to be competitive. And, I'll just add one more thing there. I mean, one of my biggest observations once I made this transition from being on the policy side of things into politics is that there is a real lack of understanding among the general public about what exactly is wrong with our politics. I think there's this feeling that, a lot of us are getting screwed, that the system is rigged against us, but why that is, a question I would get a lot in the last campaign I ran was, well, Morgan, you say you're not taking money from big corporations, but, aren't you getting money from individuals? And isn't that all the same thing? It's like, no. And if you don't understand what the difference there is, then we don't understand power. And if we have people in this country that don't understand power, then God help us, because we have a lot of people that are trying to rig a system to make sure that that power stays with just a few. And it is hurting most of us, and especially places like Ohio. So we have a lot of education to do on that side.
But why crypto specifically? There are folks on the left who've given this critique of the cryptocurrency universe that it, in fact, worsens the problems that you've just explained. This notion that cryptocurrency can be deflationary because Bitcoin, for example, has a fixed issuance schedule and therefore will do in many ways some of the points that you've just made. It will actually concentrate power. This is the critique that we hear often from the left, particularly the progressive left. I'm curious how you think about that and why you see cryptocurrency specifically as a potential avenue for growth and for empowerment when so many folks on the Justice Democrat side seem to not feel that that's the case.
Well, what intrigues me about it is the potential for decentralizing power, because, we know what the current system is. And this is what I think we have to focus on, making sure that people understand what is happening in the current system. The current system is dominated by a few large players that set all of the terms. And, like I put in a recent thread, and there's a lot of manipulation around that. There's a lot of scams, and we see that it isn't leading to broad economic opportunity. And so let's make sure that there is an understanding of what the status quo is and what the potential could be. And, definitely on a learning journey with this of a more decentralized system. That blockchain technology, crypto, could allow for a different set of people to be capturing value from economic activity that is being created. That is huge if it plays out in that way. And, and that's why I want to be talking to a lot of people to figure out how we can harness that potential to make sure that we're getting as much benefit as possible, but also, of course, protecting people from risks as well.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.